for this week is the album Kin, recently released by Kamaru, Editions Migo, Editions Migos, Migos, the rap group. They're in charge of Editions Mego. Hope everyone is doing well. We got ourselves a doozy. We got ourselves our monthly project presentations for the months of January and February. And with us, helping us discussing our works, as much discussion as we could get in with the amount of submissions we got. We have the illustrious, probably the most formally on paper illustrious composer, performer, artist, all around cool dude, Raven Chacon. Welcome to Group Critique Fight Club, my man.
Hey, thanks, Max.
Thank you. Thank you. You and I are in the same region of Hudson Valley. In fact, we share a studio that neither of us share at the same time. So we aren't running into each other, though we should have a sitcom or something like that, where it's
Yeah,
just
yeah,
a bunch of weird noise freaks in a basement somewhere in Hudson Valley, a windowless
yeah.
basement at their tables. How are you, man?
Good, good. And yeah, we got to get some tacos sometime across
I
the
know
street.
we gotta get some tacos. That spot's blown up. They become TikTok famous.
Oh yeah.
I've had like to wait 45 minutes. It's wild. Unacceptable. Don't they know who I am? I was here before. Um, Thank you for coming on, man. We have, as you could probably see, quite a few submissions. This is a unique project this month that I wanted you on because it's a equal graphic score or alternative notation project as it is a performance and recording project. So everybody has paired up, and some of the pieces we're going to hear, I guess we're not going to hear them in pairs, but I will show the accompanying score made by their partner before we listen, and we will display on screen the score while we listen. But before we get into that, first of all, shout outs to the homies at Tape Trade for giving us our wonderful lossless in browser playback. We will have this entire playlist for the public afterwards to check out. We will post the link to this playlist in the show notes when we post it to the platforms afterwards. And Raven, I'll be sure to send you a link as well for your own records. But before we get into listening, I like to have a little bit of an interview conversation, but I don't want to dilly dally for too long. But Raven, just so folks who might not be super familiar with your work, you are a composer of concert music. You are an artist, a visual artist of and a let's say a conceptual artist that could create performances that include both sound and movement and other mediums. And you are a musician. You play noise as you so articulately put in that roulette video that I screen grabbed and put on here for the promotion. So if you could just tell us a bit of your trajectory, what led you from, I'm assuming, more DIY, potentially underground upbringings, uh, coming up the chain of of new music, a big new music trademark, and what has led you to where you're at.
Yeah, it was all kind of separate. I I learned the piano at a young age. I was able to take piano lessons, and I wasn't very good at that. I wasn't even really interested in the piano, but I learned to read music, and
Mm,
after learning that skill, I was fascinated by all the other instruments. I then understood, maybe at least the language that the musicians read to play those instruments, and I tried to teach myself all these things. Cello. I tried to get a hold of a cello. I learned the bass guitar. I then switched to six-string guitar, and I was interested in metal too. Playing in bands.
yeah.
And I think somewhere in there I got frustrated with metal. I mean, I still love metal, but somewhere in there the fidelity just got too clean. Like production got better. And I was thinking this should get uglier and uglier.
You're one of those purists that's just like throw the recording in the ocean and light it on fire and then we're good to go. One of those.
Yeah, I didn't know, I didn't. The only thing I kept hearing was better and better quality, and I was thinking, this should get dumber and dumber. And I think that's what led me to noise, just I wanted
Really?
something even harsher and harsher, and I started doing that. And, separate from that, I still had this interest in composing, and so I studied music formally. I studied composition, music theory, all of this at the University of New Mexico, and I finished with that degree. But these were still two separate practices, and I didn't think either of them was going to be anything to make money with, surely not the noise. And so I wanted to study video, I wanted to do all these other things, and that led me to go study at Cal Arts for grad school.
Gotcha.
And it was there that all these things that I thought were very separate were able to be combined in some
Mm.
way. And I didn't know that you could make a living improvising. I didn't realize that until a few years ago, in my 40s, but I think all of this just over, 25, 30 years of doing this, it caught up to me and people, paid attention. And so it was certainly, 20 years of driving around the country and playing noise shows to in basements and, to just a few people and somewhere in there it all caught up.
I mean, there's also a bit of the influence of the noise, not just the timbre in which you once again very nicely put tat I want to tat this on my chest, like like a lot of information. Noise is just a lot of information. I thought that was a great quote of yours. But it's a timbre, but as well as that, the action of performing, as we often call like live actions and stuff. And I sense a bit of that sort of translating in some of your works, including the marathon of performances that you recently premiered throughout Albuquerque, New Mexico last year. Which my in-laws who live in Albuquerque tuned in to the PBS live to watch like the live broadcast on local public broadcasting. So you blew up the airwaves that day, but there were singers on horses. We didn't get the report performance, but that's a separate piece that I feel is very much a live noise action in some ways. Can you talk about how like beyond just the idea of noise being an interesting timbre that appeals to you in its harshness, but the culture, let's say, of live and noise performance and the underground basement dwelling degenerates that we are, how that has you know crept in to the concert halls potentially.
Yeah, for me, noise was this gateway to improvisation and
Mm,
performance and theater and all the things that can happen in a performance where you throw fidelity out the window, you throw virtuosity out the window, and you just have volume and noise.
mm,
So it lets you focus on all these other things. And I think that interest paired with my interest in making like scores, and breaking apart scores, making text scores, graphic scores. I think that all of that was this other liberating practice that was very much in conflict with the traditional concert music
right.
priorities. So yeah, I mean, I think, even though I don't really use noise in the concert music projects yet, I think it's still related and it's still done in response to that
Right.
world of concert music.
Well, there's certainly noisy timbres in your concert music, but maybe not you with a folding table and pedals just headbanging. Not yet. Not
Right,
yet.
right. Yeah. Oh yeah, certainly just making new sounds with the viola or whatever, or the bass clarinet. I mean, I think that's why I don't really amplify those yet because I'm still fascinated by those instruments and what they can do. And
Fantastic.
so I'm still learning, I'm still exploring.
And for those that aren't aware, when I name dropped the piece report, that is a chamber piece for gun ensemble, firearms ensemble, which I had posted a video of also on Instagram in promotion of this. But that feels so truly Southwestern, as well, and I know you grew up around there and stuff, and this is a type of piece that can really only be done in the desert in gun-friendly states or regions of the country. But it knowing the much of your writing and politics related to a lot of these pieces, it felt like this feels very revolutionary to see high society new music folks, approach these things as, oh, fascinating, like it's a,
Yeah.
because sometimes I feel like it's just like a middle finger to that whole world, oftentimes, but you're not fucking around here. Like this is composition still, you know
Yeah, absolutely. It's still composed, it's still written in Western notation. It just happens to be for guns, and
just
it's still a listening piece, it's a noise piece, but it's amazing when that piece gets performed, how much you can hear the landscape within that
yep.
gunshot. In the echo, you hear all the information of that place.
Yep. Yep. And for anybody that wants to know, it's about the distinction of fireworks versus gunshots. If you're in the city and you're not quite sure, fireworks don't have reflections because they happen way up there, right? Gunshots, you're going to hear that pre-delay into post-delay reverb. It's a wonderful thing. Sound studies for firearms. This is lovely stuff. Well, I don't want to dilly-dally any longer. We got a lot of music. I already told folks we're not holding you hostage. We said we're gonna do a hard stop at 8:30. If we have a little more time, we'll continue on for a couple more. But everybody knows that if we don't get to everybody live, it's okay. Your works will be featured in the playlist. And if Raven, if you take a listen later on and you want to give a shout out to folks, you give me your notes and I'll be sure to forward it to the people on the Discord. Um, so starting off, we have a piece performed by L. Spur, but composed by Terrence. And I want to see if we have a score. Doesn't look like we have. Do we have? Oh, I think. Oh, here we go. Yes, here's the score. Beautiful. Okay, we're gonna take a listen, and then you and I will discuss a bit afterwards. All right. This is music for a singular helicopter. All right. Yeah. Give it up, everybody. So this is the actual score. This was Terrence's score that we're looking at here. The other one was his was Elsper's score for Terrence. So we're looking at here an image, and it took me halfway through the piece to notice that there's a fire. There's a vector image of a fire pit, very nuanced, burned into this image here. What do you think, Raven? I'm personally enjoying the representation of rotary repetition through the usage of pattern. You know, like it didn't feel like there was ever a linear portion to this. It felt like even if they were long patterns, it felt like there was always a repetition point one way through the rotation or something like that. Did you notice that?
Yeah, yeah, I was thinking that, I mean, the title for, what is it? Something for
Music
helicopter?
for
Music for helicopter.
yeah, singular helicopter.
Yeah, I guess when you have a title like that, you wonder what that means. Does it mean that the helicopter is going to be the instrument, is going to be making sound? Does it mean that it's for being in a helicopter and this is the kind of soundtrack, like music for airports, right? Like
Right.
that you're going to be in the airport and this is the soundtrack. Or does it mean like something else? I don't know, that there's a situation of a helicopter and you're not in the helicopter and you're kind of watching this helicopter fly around, but it's still the soundtrack from the ground. And I think that's what I gathered from this was that it wasn't trying to match a rotary rhythm, which we would just think, I mean, I don't know anything about helicopters, but I figure it's just going fast as hell, right?
Right.
There's not going to be much difference in rhythm or like there's not going to be, I don't know, a choppy rhythm or anything. This thing has to keep going, and it's going at a fast tempo. So I appreciate that. So so Ellsberg made this, right?
Yeah,
From Terrence's
Ellsberg
score,
performed the piece or
performed
recorded and
it.
performed it, and Terrence provided the score, the imagery.
So I figure that Ellsberg took this prompt of these moments
Yeah.
of seeing this thing in the sky and equating it to a different parameter. I mean, maybe it's distance and we hear it slower, for
Mm,
instance, or we see it pass, we see it get lost behind some trees or a building and then reemerge and something has changed. So there were these quick cuts that if we were trying to make a one-to-one relationship of a speed of a helicopter probably wouldn't make sense, but these feel very episodic that we're seeing different helicopters or the helicopter in a different place in the sky, for instance.
right, right. And also like pairing that with the imprint, the subtle imprint of fire also sort of gave this, I don't know, to me it felt like representing of not like distortion, decay, but like saturation in a way that like there was texture involved, much like a fire singes something past that didn't feel perfect. I don't know. Like it felt like not that the helicopter was on fire necessarily, but that we were viewing this through smoke, different plumes or something like that. I don't know. It's a fascinating score from Terrence. Uh, and Terrence is a classically trained composer as well. I don't know how much experience he's got in graphic notation, but this is the beautiful thing, right? We could take an image and interpret it one in many different ways. How often in your scores, when you have different performances, Raven, are you getting a night and day distinct performance with the same score? Because, things can be very much open to interpretation through your symbology and visual language.
Yeah, they're often very specific. I mean, even if it's a graphic score, it's usually accompanied by some very specific text.
Mm,
I only have one score that's kind of like, here's a picture, do whatever you want.
right.
And that was a kind of test for myself to see what the result would be.
Yeah.
And I think everybody should do one of those. Every composer should do one. I tell composition students this that every composer should do one because the art people are doing it now. So like
Mm.
you better do one.
Yeah, you better get in on this shit, dog. Seriously, we need some more objects, you know?
But just do one, otherwise you're the composer who does these ink blot, things and just say play this, and it's super lazy. But no, I appreciate this prompt of this photo, right? And then
Yeah,
I didn't even see the fire thing, so
yeah,
I think yeah, as this kind of secondary or this other extension of the piece, I mean that's an interesting image,
yeah.
accompanying it.
There's a phantom. There's some sort of spirit behind it that to me is affecting it in a way that maybe leads to the imperfection or jolted nature of it. Because, like you said, like we see, I'm imagining a singular helicopter being played. I'm imagining chopped rhythms. We got none of that. We just got patterns, elongated patterns. I don't know. It was a fascinating piece, and this is good for everybody to know. Thinking about when making graphic scores of like the usage of text and graphics. If you want to leave it to complete interpretation, give the ink blots. But if you want specific things to be done, combination of various ways of notating, we're in the 21st century. We can make our own rules here,
Yeah.
right? Like you said, like it took you going to grad school to realize that you can combine all of these things, right? That's a liberating feeling. I had that same thing in grad school. It's a someone to tell you that improvisation can be composition.
Oh
What?
yeah.
You kidding me?
Yeah. And
Well, yeah,
even
yeah. Go ahead.
even in a graphic and text score, I mean, a text score can be something that's very technical,
Yeah.
like an IKEA manual or something, or it
Hmm.
could be something very poetic, like what Yoko Ono
Right.
does. And so you have all these different, yeah, ways of even just, describing the prompt that you want to make. So I think, yeah, I encourage composers to, even though they're making a graphic score, have some other handles in there that can, give it be information for whoever's interpreting it.
Totally. Be as specific as you need to be.
Yeah.
Well, now we have, conveniently, we have Terrence's performance of Elsper's score, which is just doesn't have a title, it's just interpretation of the piece. And that was this score. So now we will listen to the companion work. Hell yeah. Wonderful. Very much a fan of both the interpretation and the score because I'm a big dummy that needs instructions, and when I'm given lines, when I'm given grids, I can instantly find myself falling in one direction and then going into another. I'm going from diagonal to vertical to horizontal. And this interpretation of this piece felt like maneuvering directions. It felt like a study in directions. Sometimes we're going up, sometimes we're blocked and we're sustained. Sometimes it's just linear to nowhere, like a box, a cell on its own. I don't know. How did you feel about this interpretation?
Yeah, same thing. I mean, I love the way the score looks, and it's funny because it is it. Somebody said, "No, swear it's moving," and it does look
Yeah.
like it. It's skewed in this way that yeah, implies this kind of change of register or whatever. So it's like if you do try to follow it, you feel this drift, and I think that came across in the interpretation. I
Yeah.
felt like I kind of had my own read on it that the first minute of it seemed to match this exactly as maybe I would have tried to interpret it too, where you had these I guess this kind of ascending thing happening and then it resets and does it again, but it's shorter and shorter and shorter, meaning it's going to speed up by the end. And so that first minute had done that, and to me, it made sense to this logic of how this score looks to me. After that, I was trying to come up with a new logic, and it just kept changing. But I really liked the music. I mean, the parts where it was in the lowest register, and you had these hits, and then it was process or affected. I don't know. I can't remember exactly what it
Yeah.
was called. I guess just
Overdriven,
yeah,
overdriven
overdriven
marimba.
and had some echo on it. And then
Yeah.
it had like this other kind of field recording behind it or something, I think, right?
Yeah, I was wondering if that was just in the room playing the instrument itself, like almost diegetic, or if that was actually the air on top of it. There was, you know what it is that there was this, it's a study between like staying in the grid, like coloring within the lines and then deciding to go out of the grid, even within the score itself, like starting seemingly perfectly aligned with a grand staff and then getting sketchy and sketchier as some of the lines continued on, and then comparing that also to these various staff lines just kind of splattered throughout a little bit here and then some blocks. It felt like this sort of binary study between trying to stay in the grid, which we did hear like a percussion, like a kick drum, kind of locking us into a tempo, and it felt even more obvious when the performer decided to go out of the tempo intentionally here. You know, it felt like this conversation between intentional perfection and intentional imperfection.
Yeah, some other things about the score too. I think I mean, this like shadow or whatever, or this different
Mm-hmm.
backgrounds too.
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to find some logic or see how that might have been interpreted in the version that was heard. And then these kind of these redacted black squares,
Yeah.
trying to figure out if this was, what that was. And it got me thinking too about I think it's Earl Brown has one of these scores that has these
Right.
kind of black lines, and those end up being these kind of events. And
Yes.
so yeah, thinking if that was a pitch, maybe a pitch kind of prompt, or I
Or
don't
a
know.
literal redaction. Like we're all Epstein brained now. The only way we can interpret these things, it's reduction, intentionally subtracting something in those moments. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, what's
Terrence
under there?
Terrence Terrence chimed in and to let us know that the distortion is recorded directly from the speakers of the Casio Privia keyboard in which he's performing the marimba preset. So we're hearing speaker specificity here. That's not acoustic processing. That's happening right there. That's pushing
Awesome.
air, you know?
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, use that again. That's a great sound.
Really good tone on that. And yes, everybody, Earl Brown, check him out. 1950s New York school, Dave alongside David Tudor, John Cage, obviously, this real first wave of American alternative notation occurring en masse. Earl Brown definitely known for these graphic, gridded like blotches of redacted imagery, Good stuff, really good. Man, it's been a minute since I've checked out his scores. I had to do in David Grubbs's class. We did some in grad school.
Uh,
We did some readings of that.
yeah,
While
yeah.
talking about the New York school. Shout outs to Grubbs. Shout out to Professor Grubbs. Always got to shout out the goat. Um, Good stuff. Thank you to Terrence and Elspur for being our first pair. Um, we will continue on now with we have a singular piece performed by Wilf and composed by Bryson. And although we have the no the audio itself, there was actually the score for this was a video score to be performed to. And so we actually have the video that I will pull up here. Where sorry. Pulling up here. Okay, we got ourselves a Google Drive link. Hopefully, we will be able to all watch together. So, this is a performance of Bryson's score performed by Wilf, and Bryson made the video itself. right. We got ourselves some video sound pairings going on. I don't know if we have any other video works as far as these submissions go. Um, and we have a question from the performer that I'd love to hear your thoughts on, Raven. I don't know if you saw in the chat. Wilf was saying all the microtonal stuff came out when running a chaotic analog sequencery thing at audio rate. So we have some digital stretching, granular stretching going on. But I'm worried it sounds kind of Syrian. So question to the class is, does this sound like cool emergent chaos or icky fake Arab core? Are we going for that microtonal macams, which, I wouldn't have thought of until they brought it up, but
Right.
if you've heard any of those Yamaha Middle Eastern North African keyboards, they have that really bright synthesized bagpipe sort of preset that's used in all of like the Dabka wedding music and stuff, like Omar Suleiman and stuff like that. So that does, I can understand the timbral brightness and microtonality sort of wobbliness going on. But personally, I was thinking, leaning towards the former here of microtonal stretching going on here, and not some form of Orientalism.
Yeah, I unfortunately don't know enough about Syrian music
Yeah.
to gauge if this was appropriative or not, and I fortunately don't know enough about fake Arab core. It looks like that's all one word, right?
That is,
That,
that's the
that'd be
new
a
hot
great
shit, bro. You got to keep up, bro.
that'd be a great band name actually, all one word, fake Arab
Yes.
core.
Yes.
Uh, but no, I didn't hear any of that, so I guess you're all right.
Guess
But
you're
who
all
knows?
right.
Yeah, I don't know
Me,
enough about any of that, but I did hear the microtonality. Um,
absolutely.
but yeah, what else to say about well, this was interesting because, I taught this class a couple years ago at the new school. Well, it was like a workshop week thing, and it was a graphic score workshop, and quite a few students made video scores.
Hmm.
And of course, the conversation came up, what's the difference between making a score that is using moving image as prompting or versus just making a video that you're asking somebody to make the soundtrack to?
Right. That's a good
And
question.
and so yeah, so that question came up, and it gets me thinking, yeah, I don't have an answer there, but I suppose if this was a score, that the person who was interpreting it would probably should respond to some of the text that came up within the score, and we should hear a change at those moments. So we
Right.
saw the word accommodation, we saw the phrase convergence of axes. At
Hmm.
that point, I was expecting to hear a convergence of some kind of axes, and I think there was. It sounded like maybe there was a pitch thing happening, or a slow crossfade of filtering or something happening.
Right.
But this whole thing is really kind of this meta possibility because we're watching a video about the eyes, and to
Yeah.
follow the score, you're going to need to watch it.
Yeah.
So there was a possibility to use prompting to tell somebody to like shut their eyes or
Mm,
do different things with their eyes that would affect how they read the score.
right.
So yeah, I don't, so maybe there's something to be played with there.
Yeah, I
Within,
feel like
to keep going with this
that's
idea
what
of using
exactly what I
something.
was gonna say, is that
Yeah,
this sounds like something that Wilf should return to in various iterations. Because my thought exactly regarding, like, when given a video score, what's to stop you from just making a musical accompaniment, a film score to a piece of video art, right?
yeah,
In which you would expect there to be cues that are more aligned with what's happening on the screen, even to like a rhythmic extent or an impact of some sort happening when there's a hard cut. Um, but at the same time, there are so many elements to this of graphic notation that if we just paused one of the stills in here, there would be a universe of graphic notation, especially at the beginning with the various little I don't know, atoms or little lines going through it, light beams going through the eye and out, things like that, which felt very much reflected in these little sputtering bright things. It felt like light was coming through. That was the sound of light sonified there. Um, but yeah, this is what they're saying in the chat of just like what makes it one versus the other is the intention here, you know. And so this was not intended to be a film score this time around, but an exploration is worth to consider going back to, you know.
Yeah, maybe adding some text saying what one is supposed to do. If
Right,
that was the idea that they use their eyes
right,
in what the video is asking the person who's watching it to do,
totally.
then supplying text would make that more clear. And yeah, that could be really interesting.
Yeah, and that's for Bryson, our composer. I don't know if they're here in the chat right now. But very good to know if it's again like you want something done specifically, put as much information, literal information as there needs to be as part of the score. There could be a text accompaniment, instructional, first page, one pager before getting into the video itself. But this is a wonderful one interpretation of it, and I'd love to hear. Maybe Bryson will get back to us with their intention. You know, we heard from Wilf's intentions and doubts, but we are safely not in fake Arab core territory, so don't worry about that. Oh, is Bryson here? Bryson here? No, I believe in less instructions. Okay, all right, interesting. Is that Bryson? I don't know. If it is, now we know. Good shit, nonetheless. Thank you, Bryson and Wilf. Let us continue on. I will close this tab for now. Okay, we have a piece from Snoom, Leo, aka Snoom, composed by Corey, called Memory Melt. And I believe do we have a score from Snoom and Corey? I don't know if we have Corey's score. Do we have it in this Google Drive? Let's see. Yeah, we do. Okay, cool. All right, I will put up the image while we listen. Here we go. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Sometimes we just need a good piece notated on the question mark staff. Like sometimes we just need a piece that's a combination of two elements and we can see everything on the page. This is a straightforward score. Corey, you don't need to talk down about your visual skills. This is simple is good sometimes, and we had Leo doing a wonderful interpretation of this, starting off with a drone and then six melting elements come in, maybe we ended up with a 7-part polyphony or 8-part polyphony towards the end. I'm not sure, but I don't know. Sometimes the single or the two staffer single pager can get a lot done. I mean, look at composition 1967 Lamont Young, right? To be held for a long time. That's got a lot of weight to it. This felt very aligned with Lamont era Fluxus. What do you think, Raven?
Yeah, yeah. As a score, it makes sense to me. I guess there's still staff lines for the question mark clef,
Mm-hmm.
meaning this is not going to be in a key, but it's still I think implying register. So that's why we have these six different maybe tones or components of the upper drones that's indicating.
Mm-hmm.
And then it says bittersweet childhood memories. I don't know how the performer took that prompt. Maybe they could put it in the chat. Oh, I see here. I was imagining the star shapes.
Six different granular layers come in together and then spread the grains slowly and melting. Okay. But where's the childhood bittersweetness come in, Leo? Give us the whole story.
Yeah, I'd love to hear that. And I think as Leo is typing that, yeah, then thinking, I'm assuming that then we had this kind of lower drone, not necessarily lower in register, but this other kind of bed that these other things are happening, and it looks like it expands, or they're using this kind of crescendo marking to just show that it spreads, maybe in
Mm-hmm.
pitch. Um, and so yeah, I think for me to follow the score, this one was an easy one to follow or to make sense of. And
Absolutely.
yeah, it's successful. And yeah, I second that. You don't have to be able to draw to make these things. I think
Totally.
it all and the other thing that sometimes happens that you see people do is use a staff as an ironic kind of thing, but you actually used it here. It has meaning. I can tell that there's a reason for this here. So,
100%.
um, yeah, I appreciate that.
We didn't completely deconstruct the notion of register and things like that. Obviously, pitch. It looks like Leo was saying the samples were all from a piano record by George Winston, December by George Winston, that I used to listen to as a kid. Well, there you go. You know, Listening to music could bring up all sorts of bittersweet childhood memories here. And this felt very much with respect to those memories, tapping into, I don't know, there's an ambiguity to seventh chords, both major and minor and dominant, that to me bring out I mean, emotions are all so subjective here. But there's something longing and melancholic in this that I don't know if that aligns with bittersweet as a descriptor here, but maybe the innocence of childhood relates to the usage of seventh chords and something straightforwardly tonal in a way, because this felt more experimental as far as texture goes while giving us something very palatable from the tonality, right?
Yeah, yeah. This all gets me thinking too that seeing the way Leo interpreted this and using it as a prompt to grab content and material from something that they listened to when they were a kid, um, that gets the thing going in motion. And I guess the question here is because the word bittersweet is in there to use there's so many of these terms in music that of course have double meanings, but like resolution, right? Is this a
Mm.
situation that it has dissonance, has consonance, and we're seeking it to be resolved through the course of very long drone, or does it remain as this kind of unresolved chord at the end of it? I mean, that's
Mm,
going to have significance, but also I suppose it's up to the performer to either leave it resolved or unresolved.
that's
And
right.
so that's an interesting outcome of this
I'm loving it's forcing
proposition.
it's forcing the performer to get real vulnerable and thinking about these things.
Yeah.
Leo, I expect 1,000 words on whether or not your childhood, bittersweet childhood memories were resolved or if they're still ongoing. This is fantastic, though, and a very good challenge from a very simple but thoughtful challenge from Corey, produced and performed by Leo here. And for the sake of pairs, let's put Corey's performance of Leo's piece up next. Just for, you know, why we keep it nice and symmetrical. Um, Corey has performed a piece. Leo said no comment as far as if there's resolution to those childhood memories. We'll leave it there. We'll leave it there. But Corey has written to us that Leo made this beautiful graphic score that I tried to interpret sonically as lines of music playing simultaneously, made using a Roland JDXI, fretless bass, tongue drum, and lots of pedals. Not sure if I did it justice, but this was an interesting experiment. All right, so we got the full instrumentation breakdown. We have a wonderful set of imagery here. Let us go ahead and hear Memory Melt by, oh, sorry. The, I don't know what the name of the piece is. The piece by Leo Snoom, performed by Corey. All right. Fantastic work. Fantastic score from Leo and performance by Corey. Once again, a completely different visual language here, but straightforward graphic score that is accessible to interpretation. You know, if you'd like to look at it the way that you would a staff going from left to right. There's obviously no rules and no one telling me that I have to do that. But were you finding yourself? What direction were you finding yourself reading this, Raven?
Yeah, I tried. Yeah, I don't know. I tried to look for the four and the five, and then I think when things are disconnected, I mean, none of these things touch each other. It's
Yeah,
hard. Of course, all listeners will try to make a logic of how it happens. So at a certain point, I just kind of just listened, and I separated myself in just being able to listen to the what we were hearing, which I thought was wonderful, and separate looking at this, which I also think is wonderful. I guess I found myself thinking that these didn't need to go together, which is
yeah,
okay. I
that's
mean,
okay.
yeah, I mean, I love the I love this as a visual art piece, not connected to music, and I love what the music was happening.
Right.
So it's a compliment on both ends, but I guess I just yeah, I stopped following it because I couldn't follow a logic there, and maybe that's okay too. It's not to say there isn't a logic that the performer was following or was creating, but yeah, I appreciated both separately, which is maybe kind of rare even for me to do.
Mm.
So that's a big deal.
I also am loving the comments. People are saying primordial and Cambrian period ocean realness. You know, like there's a where the it's evocative of fossils, right?
Yeah,
Just by the imagery, and how does that relate to, I don't know, the sound of shells even with through the tongue drum and things like that. I don't know. I mean, whether or not we're reading it from left to right, knowing that there are what five p one, two, three, four, okay, so three main instruments and a lot of processing going on here. That to me at least, like comparing this to what we're seeing, uh, I found myself clinging to the line, like the drone didn't seem to stop, it just changed texture, and sometimes it became way more audible and other times it sort of took a back seat. But I really was trying to I was doing the opposite read as yours, which was really trying to find an action and a reaction, an action in the score and a reaction in the sound. um, but I think that, like you said, like that it holds its own. Both of them hold their own as separate objects, and yet, if you're like me and really forcing yourself to find moments here sonically that align here, it also works. It has the ability to be straightforward as you want it to be, which I think is a nice little touch to this. Is the able.
Turok. That makes
Sorry.
me, there's a Turok
Yes.
reference for me.
Breathplay says it feels like there's an overlap here with how the media era that later got reappropriated as vaporwave was very into dinosaurs, Turok getting sampled on Floral Shop. Yeah. Yo, that's fantastic. I'm loving that.
Yeah,
It's not the first vaporwave mention in this presentation this evening.
yeah.
It comes up quite a bit. Cuckoo saying I am Turok. Yeah, I mean, this is it's hard not to evoke Jurassic proportion to much of this, cosmic even, and part of this also bringing me to, at least on the deeper tones of some Lustmord, sort of Lovecraftian in a way, and maybe some of Lustmore's influence of Cthulhu and Lovecraft, cosmic horror, uh, brought my mind to Jurassic sonic equivalents. It's not cosmic, it's just very prehistoric, you know, cosmic in its own way. Um, this is fantastic, though.
Well,
I'm
one more
really
thing on this, I guess,
Go ahead.
back to trying, the idea of trying to follow a score. I think, especially those that came up with Western music, there is a tendency to try to read it from left to right, top to bottom, and even if you try to switch that up, do the opposite, a score doesn't necessarily need to even be linear in that way. I mean, the performer could have looked at all this information and then set upon themselves to play all of these elements at once, perhaps, or
Yeah.
to have some kind of sequence of how things enter or exit or what these even mean.
Yeah.
So it doesn't have to be like, you play the top four, then you play the five or anything like that. Um, a score could very much be, you know, non-linear or could be layered in the sense that maybe its dimension is coming towards you or it's all at once, all the information at once, and then you set about doing it
So
instead of
I'm
following a path or something.
so you're saying I'm approaching this with conservative eyes and ears. I'm trying to apply Western hegemony of music theory and notation to something that is prehistoric. This goes back. No, this is all very good points here. Is without there being literal set instructions by the composer, we should not feel the need to follow from left to right or top to bottom. It could simply be a kit of instructions that we have to assemble on our own. This could be everything in the IKEA box, but without the manual, you know?
Right, right, right. Yeah, exactly. And I did the same thing. I started at the top and just to see if that's what was happening, and it maybe wasn't. So I tried a different method. But yeah, that's another reason some kind of instructions are helpful if we
Mm-hmm.
want to decode this thing or interpret it.
Yeah,
Yeah, maybe it's just all the ingredients. I don't know, but
lovely.
yeah,
And I didn't tell anybody to include anything beyond a singular piece of alternative notation. I didn't tell them that they could do multiple things. So this is everything. This is everyone's id, compositional id, throwing at the wall here. Free reign. Yeah, Corey saying was given free reign to read it however they wanted. So this is how they read it. You know,
cool.
that's the beauty of this. Love that. Fantastic work from Corey and Leo. All right. Let us continue here. Who do we have next in our list? We have a piece performed by JD and composed by Alexane. Swirls is the name of the piece, and I believe we have ourselves a score. Yes. Okay. Here is our hand drawn score of some swirls, as the title tells. And here is JD's interpretation. It's a short one. All right, all right, all right. Wonderful performance from JD, who, by the way, when I name dropped David Grubbs and listening to Earl Brown's piece, JD, who I went to grad school with, was quick to tell me that was in Ben Vida's class that we checked out Earl Brown's work and not David Grubbs's class. So my mistake. Um, Shout outs to Brooklyn College, though. We got the heavy hitters. JD, wonderful guitar performance here. I mean, there's various ways we could interpret swirls. I was imagining more long tones moving up and down registers, and like previously, like with Elsper's piece with a grid that gets smaller and smaller and smaller. I was imagining that the phrasing getting faster and faster and faster as it got closer down to the swirl. But we ended up really with just a few separate phrases sort of just happening on their own. Uh, JD wrote that they were given the instruction to pick a swirl or as many as you'd like, follow the swirl and see where it takes you. I don't want to say more. I'll let you do what you wish. And so I read mixed notes. That was their interpretation of this. How are you feeling about this, Raven?
Yeah, thanks JD for providing the extra instructions there. Um, because then I was able to follow it, and we're bringing up a lot of the old school dudes, like Earl Brown and them. But yeah, it got me thinking then of like what Cage did with the variations scores, where I think it's variations four or one of them, where it's like you drop these circles and shapes onto they're transparency sheets, you drop them onto each other, and then you do things at the intersections where those things cross. And
Mm.
so I was kind of thinking that maybe that's what happened here. You followed a swirl, it intersected or crossed over another swirl, you jumped tracks and then went on that one for a while and you got to another one and jumped back on a black swirl. I was kind of following it like that, and I think it made sense in that if I did that. And so yeah, I mean this worked, I think, as an idea of adding new things, of having layers, and then where you chose to switch, I think was apparent also.
Also, the very deliberate shifts in tone color of the guitar itself per swirl, very analogous to the choice of colors here. you know I was imagining the low bass as our purple. That's our foundation that is omnipresent for the most part here. But then we have some green, some orange, some light blue, and then just black filled in. Just direct analogy to the shift in processing between very twang all the way up through heavily processed granular delay. It felt very literal. Like I'm guitarists know about tone color, and JD is also a wonderful mix engineer too. So they're all about various degrees of saturation and coloration here. Uh, but I always joke that guitarists no tone. You want to give them purple, they'll find a purple tone for you on the through their pedal chain. You want to give them orange, they'll figure that out. Compared to a lot of other producers, I feel like guitarists are tapped into tone, something that was a directly applied here. You know, Good
Cool.
stuff. Good stuff. Thank you, JD, for this short and sweet excerpt. Unfortunately, Anna did not submit their their work that JD composed for them, so we can't be fully uh, uh, what's the word? We don't have we have an incomplete pair for this one, but
Can we
that's
still look
okay.
at the score? Can we still
Yeah, why not?
take a
Why
look?
not? JD, did you submit your graphic score? Can you get that in the Discord potentially? Symmetrical, reciprocal, yeah, you know what I was saying. JD, send us your score. Okay, they'll submit it now. And we will take yeah, I want to see
Take a
I just
look.
want to
Yeah.
see what they're doing because JD and I both studied with privately with Dr. Grubbs in the MFA time. Shout outs to CUNY. All right, here we go. Oh, hell yeah, that's right. You made them a Dungeons and Dragons map, right? You made them a tabletop map. Oh, hell yeah. I would have loved to hear this. True gamified game composition. We're going past John Zorn game score. We're going to literal hand-drawn tabletop RPG game score. Oh my God. This is fantastic.
Nice.
I love the usage, I mean the perfection involved. First of all, JD, wonderful visual art. Did not know you had that in there in the 15 years that I've known you. Did not know that you can draw nicely. But the 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 juxtaposition of shape and literal graph involved here, there's just so much to work with, you know? Oh man.
Yeah,
How
you
would
know,
you interpret this?
I would, if given the time and space and budget, I would I would do this spatially. I'd go find a big field or a bunch of rooms like this and go through it. Move room to room. Maybe it's for 10 musicians to go through different rooms. Maybe each of these circles are musicians and we move around this big maze and bump into each other and we're all playing our instruments. I don't know, but it would be a completely spatial
Fantastic.
experience.
Fantastic idea. JD, come on, get it together. Rent a corn maze, commission a corn maze from scratch.
Make the thing, yeah. Make the stage here and
Make
do
it
it.
happen. Oh my God. That you would, Raven. You would do it that way, wouldn't you? Throughout the city of Albuquerque
Yeah,
or throughout the Hudson Valley.
yeah,
This is
yeah.
somewhere. Fantastic idea. A coffee field. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Fantastic. Good stuff. Well, thank you for sharing that, JD. Even though we weren't able to hear the interpretation, we got some good ideas moving forward. Crop circle, crop circle performance. Exactly, exactly. All right. Well, let's do another pair and we'll call it
Sounds good.
for the live stream if you're cool with that. We have a pair now from Makita and Kuku who are going to present for us. We have the performance, the first one, the performance by Makita, composed by Cuckoo, entitled Recording Number 19. And I believe, do we have a score? Where is Makita's submission? Did we get it? Oh, yes. Yes, 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 yes. All right. So this is Makita's performance of Cuckoo's score. Here we go. Awesome. Awesome. I'm loving this on a few different levels. For one, it's a prompt. It's a text score that prompts the performer to make a graphic score to then perform. They have the so I'm assuming Makita drew these lines and they wrote it down actually in the Discord. They were tracing the movements of a professional figure skater using field recordings of amateur skaters on a frozen lake and skating rink in Vilnius. So that was the sound source. Just in this Olympic, this is a piece for the Olympiads, you know. Um, but I'm very much enjoying the uh, the the movement here. You know, like quite literally based on direct movements. Okay, so never mind. Cuckoo drew these lines and the performer was to imitate them, but that's even okay. Sorry, I misinterpreted this. These are Cuckoo's lines. Um, so what's so the performance is utilizing uh the movements of in field recordings of skaters on a frozen lake. Got it. Based on the usage of screenshot of Olympic skater in there. Still, I interpreted this in that way, and and we should do it that way too. You know, keep it as a prompt. Um, I'm absolutely enjoying the just the inclusion of a still image of a figure skater without any instructions related to that. Because I think Makita did exactly what I would have done, which is to relate swirls and motions and loops of the hand being drawn with a single line and a pen in relation to the motion of the skater. No?
Yeah. Yeah, this is cool. I mean, it sounded great. The score looks cool. I like the score.
Me too.
Um, the handwrittenness of it and everything. So the composer supplied this image though, right? As part of the score of
Yes.
the ice
Yeah,
skate. Okay.
that's the confusion here is that they say to
So
hold and pick the note, but also to hold a pen in one hand and follow the line, which is what they did. This was strictly just a performance interpretation of those lines. Um, I think that Cuckoo said doesn't even remember. Great, great. I think that we could have a little bit more clarity on that. Because my idea, what I was interpreting this as, Cuckoo agrees is a cool idea, but that's not what happened here. So I guess that's my confusion here is who's
yeah,
drawing
I'm
the line.
confused too.
Yeah,
And who supplied the ice skating samples? Who?
That was Makita. That was the
Okay.
performer. That was the
Okay.
performer, and because that was the sound source of you know that was this was all granular processing of sounds of ice skating. Um,
But
but that wasn't instructed literally beyond the usage of just an image of an ice skater.
yeah,
Fantastic.
amazing.
Fantastic.
Amazing.
I would have had to interpret the same way if I was told, you know, just given this image and told to do something, follow these lines, but also here's an ice skater. Um, because to me, it's just reminding me of it's just reminding me of choreography, or at least like motion, you know. And it makes it easy to interpret it that way when there is a this still image of an ice skater,
It's
right?
even a blue pen, like the image has this same blue in it, I think.
Yes, yes. You
Yeah.
know, it's all very cohesive. I think it's just the instructions could be a little bit more, maybe in rather than telling the person to hold the pen, it's to follow along my pen in one hand and following that, you know. Um, oh, they sent a video for the oh, okay, that was how they interpret.
So
Okay, interesting. Yeah.
Cuckoo sent a video to Makita, and then Makita chopped up the samples from the video, maybe?
Okay, hold on. Where's Cuckoo's video recording from Ableton because it looks interesting? Is that from No, this is a different this is the other this is the Makita's piece that Cuckoo was recording.
Let's look at the chat. I think they're,
What?
but I
I sent
like,
video, but
oh,
I like how Makita assembled it visually. Cuckoo, you're confusing us. No, that's for another one. You're confusing us. We're very simple people here.
Anyway, it's cool. Good job.
I mean, I think it's a great interpretation by Makita to just be, from
Yeah,
utilizing the sound of skating as the sole origin of raw materials here sonically.
yeah,
There's only so many ways to interpret that ice skater, you know.
yeah.
Cuckoo
Very
said it was
cool.
in the DMs. You DM'd me the video. I don't even see it, bro. Or you sent it to each other in the DMs. Well, I'm not there. I ain't there. I ain't in your DMs. All right,
That was
let's
great.
hear.
I could listen to that all day. It was great. Yep.
Yes, absolutely. All right, let's hear Makita's composition performed by Cuckoo, in which they did include a score, which we can open up here, called Working. Ah, all right. Well, this takes a little second to check out. Windows are the smallest rhythmic units. They could be notes or percussive hits. This is what I'm talking about. Here we got some very literal instruction going on. Mind how the first three floors on the front side are much narrower than the others. That might mean shorter notes and or higher. Hold on, I'm getting my zoom window out of the way here. Uh, that might mean shorter notes or higher pitch. Mind how the intervals between windows are different depending on the building size. Balconies are thick slabs of concrete hanging ominously at the top and creating heavy bass at the bottom. They have weight and texture. Balconies are probably bass. I like that. Probably. Not, I don't know. Some parts of the building have been purposely modified or changed by themselves over time. Balconies got repainted, windows replaced, walls have cracks, patches and moss and mold. We hear degradation, decay, noise. Very, very cool. Okay. I'm going to keep that image up while we listen to Cuckoo's performance of Makita's piece entitled, You Got It, Building. Let's go. Gotta love it. Gotta love the grid. Gotta love architecture, you know? Buildings. What better way to find graphic notation inspiration and rhythmic uh sort of variation than by the aging. And I forgot to read the introduction here, but basing this off of a 1970s uh building in, I forget where Makita is based. I think it's Belarus. I'm not sure. But you know, Eastern Bloc 1970s architecture here. Not, I don't know if this is brutalism or not, but there's certainly grid going on here. And as Cuckoo has explained, every single note is represented via window. So we just heard the full grid notation. This is a one to one, which I think is a wonderful way to interpret this. You know, I mean, how would you do that?
Yeah, I don't, I mean, yeah, it seems very specific what it's asking. I
Yeah.
guess I was wondering if the composer maybe envisioned that interpretation would include samples of the things they listed above, like
Hmm.
people cooking, birds, kids playing,
Right. Right.
traffic noises, and what it might mean to input those, as the samples into this grid.
Hmm.
If it's too on the nose or too much like, I don't know, like just what, somebody like Matt Most does or something, like
Right.
just kind of putting these things in there and it becomes this collage of sounds. But it could have interesting meaning that this was something in the 70s. I don't know if these are abandoned now or these are demolished, but to transpose that to I forgot the interpreter's name on this one.
Cuckoo.
It was Cuckoo, yeah. So Cuckoo, maybe Cuckoo is taking sounds from where they are and applying it to what the shape of these buildings or the form of these buildings. What kind of meaning could be in that when we make these transpositions across, from place to place or people to people or time, era to era? I
Right.
think that's where things can get really interesting. So,
Yeah.
uh, seeing what happens when you're putting sounds there of, from the 2020s to that in a place that was representing the 70s, for instance.
Yeah. 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 I mean, I agree that I think that like them mentioning these other sounds, bird songs, insects buzzing, and you know, people cooking, things like that. One would assume that there would be some interpretation of that sonically. Maybe not directly on the nose, like you said, Foley sounds of kitchen and glass and birds and things like that. But the the humanity, the activity that corresponds with each floor and each window. And obviously there are uh, variations of each windows that we heard through a really rich tapestry of sound design here. And I'm curious the process from Cuckoo's end of performing this. In fact, they actually did include uh, this is what the okay, so it's all MIDI. It's all MIDI. I'm assuming this is all raw synthesis. We have the OS Tyrus as the instrument. I'm not sure what that is. Oh, yeah, very cool. So it's five patches that are occurring here. Does that relate to five distinctions? We have white, gray scale, orange, yellow, slightly less yellow, gray in the whole building. Then these blotches, right? Are there five colors that we can directly apply to our tracks here? This is all doesn't need to be answered by Cuckoo directly. I'm curious. The uh the direct analogy of imagery to how we produce this piece by piece, you know? So yeah, they said there are directly five colors, five elements within here that are directly applied here. Very okay, cool. So you actually include we color coded it, of course. Look at this. There we go. Straightforward enough. Duh. There we go. Fantastic. I guess the question is just like, are there the people aren't represented uh in this graphic interpretation here. They're only mentioned. in the introduction. So maybe it was meant for something to be sort of like an ambient thought for Cuckoo's interpretation, but not a direct uh, representation in the sound production itself. I don't know. I'm enjoying the distinction here between like setting the stage and then giving quite literal instructions. You are to go around the building, right? It was very a three-dimensional piece, you know? One of the sounds is the sound of like drilling a hole. So exactly. Yeah, I mean there was definitely tone versus noise texture and varying degrees of that. There was also a white noise. So we noticed that kind of like a okay, there we go. There's noise crackle rising during the composition, like the hum of act. Okay, cool. So the noise representing the activity, the hum of activity going on there. This is a fantastic interpretation. I had forgotten. I should have read the first part out loud before I started with the bottom half. I should have started with the top half here because it sets the stage. You know, specifically this type of building in particular, uh, in relation to how we're interpreting it as a grid. You know, but I always use this analogy with students, composition students, about like utilizing the blueprint, like create a blueprint for a composition, whether it ends up being the final score, a graphic score, or just like the foundation of your sonic architecture here. So this is quite literally utilizing that same sort of thought process here to be interpreted by someone else, the builder, in this case, Cuckoo. Um, but I very much enjoy direct analogy between literal architecture and the architecture of a score, you know? Had you seen anything of this sort of like have you in your own experience, Raven, at like this analogy between architecture and composition, structure, creating a sound structure, like a foundation, these sorts
Yeah.
of things. Have you ever encountered that?
Yeah, not really from composers. I think the one that people point to is Xenakis,
Mm-hmm.
is was trained as an architect and of
Right.
course made these compositions that were influenced by his ideas in architecture. But that's actually how I met Ethan. He's our other studio mate. Is I
Yeah.
was teaching at Columbia in the School of Architecture, Columbia University, in the with architecture students, and they were given assignments of making scores about to correspond to the sonic landscapes of the places that they were intervening into or making buildings into. So
Mm.
kind of the opposite, having them think about sound as it relates to the buildings they're designing instead of towards music. And
That's
so
so interesting. I forgot that.
yeah,
Yeah, that's right. You and Ethan had met up at specifically the School of Architecture.
yeah, and we would bring him in to give input into if these structures made sense,
Right.
where possible.
It's fantastic. No, I mean, I think that this is a wonderful way, like you said, the opposite now, interpreting as music based on literal architecture here. This is one really good way of getting into the grid, exploiting the grid as if we are looking at symmetrical, factory made windows, and that there's some distinct imperfections over time, right? But that they were all at one point built to be perfectly gridded and, perfectly presented visually. It felt like a one to one, which, as it turns out, it was. Every single window accounted for as a note.
And
Wonderful stuff.
there's something interesting here though, because this is corresponding to, I mean, with these dots are the ones that are illuminated. Is it that somebody is in them, or why, or is it
Mm,
just, are we assigning things? I guess what I'm interested in is this a building at a particular time of day or on a particular day, and it would be different on a
mm,
different day, these same squares,
yeah.
And again, it's looking at all four sides of it and then back to the front again. So there's
Yep.
this form that we're going through this kind of beginning, middle, and then back to back to
Yeah.
the A section, right?
Yeah. I mean, and Mikita could have provided just a photograph of this building from all four sides too. They went above and beyond by creating their own graphic representation of it. But like
Hmm.
you said, like there's form just looking at the image here, and it's really like three sections. We got top balconies, we got mid, most of it mid without balconies, and then bottom four floors of balconies too. And then viewing it in a three-dimensional sense, there's so much form that can be directly interpreted sonically,
Hmm.
in which he actually is telling them the piece should directly follow this count, you know, 17 floors, four sides, three separate sections within each side, you know, or
Hmm.
separate types of sections here.
Yeah.
Love this. I'm loving these interpretations from folks. I know we got to go, and I want to thank everybody for submitting. I'm sorry we aren't able to get to the second half of performers. Raven will get the link and give it a gander at some point at your own pace. Raven, no pressure. Um, I'm hoping that this was of benefit to even as a thought process for everybody here as practitioners, both as composers and performers and producers, to consider, the various alternatives of notation. And I'm very grateful, Raven, for you coming on and giving your thoughts, your 2 cents to these submissions that we listened to today. Couldn't think of anyone better uh, to uh, to be a co-facilitator of this.
Hey, thanks, Max. Yeah, it's fun.
Thank you so much, and thanks to everybody for tuning in. We will see you all very soon. Hope everyone has a wonderful week. Raven, thanks again, buddy. We'll see you soon.
See you soon.